if we could narrow in on just friction points when it comes to contract compliance, that'll be our next set of questions. So, when you refer to an automotive manufacturer as a quote unquote tier, OEMs are often not considered to be tier ones themselves. They're somehow like outside of this process, or are they considered tier ones?
Simplistic view, an OEM is they're producing the vehicle that's going to be sold to the public. The tier one is supplying parts and components to those automotive assembly companies. And those are the raw material inputs for those OEMs. Tier twos supply parts or components to tier ones, tier threes to tier twos, etc.
So again, when you refer to tiers, they're like secondary to the OEMs.
One level below the OEM, they're supplying the OEMs.
So when we're talking about contract compliance, we're specifically talking about people who make the parts for OEM.
Correct. There may be some contract compliance if a tier two supplier is supplying a tier one. They say stuff flows downhill. And the tier one will have a contract compliance requirement for their OEM. They'll probably push a contract compliance requirement to their suppliers also.
So when we're referring to tier ones, then what are some of the issues when it comes to meeting contractual obligations, when it comes to benefiting OEMs?
As I mentioned, data. It all hinges around data. The customer, in this case the OEM, is going to require that parts or components that they are receiving have a certain level of documented quality. So you've got that quality control. They're going to, and that is everything from fit and finish to specifications for size and tolerances to any of a number of requirements depending on the kind of part that it is. And being able to assure that quality as well as the numbers that and delivery dates that those customers are demanding are all part of the contract. In addition, the production cycle from the beginning to the end needs to be recorded. If you have a part that you're delivering to an OEM and they discover an issue with it, or there's a recall for any particular issue, the manufacturer, the OEM, will need to be able to quickly identify what end products that they sold contain those parts that were identified as a source of the problem. And as opposed to going through a paper record, if they're able to identify a particular issue based on a manufacturing or engineering issue, they are then able to determine quickly where parts with those potential problems were used so that a recall can become as narrow as possible. A recall is obviously very expensive and it is a big liability for a company. Being able to do that efficiently and effectively is pretty important.
And just out of sheer curiosity, tier ones and automotives, how are they unique when compared to, say, tier one in pharmaceuticals or other things? Are there tighter deadlines? Is there much of a distinction there in terms of contract compliance?
Contract compliances will be similar. The automotive manufacturing market is some of the most advanced manufacturing on the planet. And the coupling between the production that an OEM is executing on and the supply chain is extremely tight. Again, the industry has led the charge in supply chain operations. And being able to deliver parts or components on time, right in time, not way ahead of time, not behind time, in the quality that is demanded. They want a car that operates the same way every time. And each of the parts and pieces need to be delivered to them the same way every time. And so assuring that is, and the volumes that they're dealing with is some of the stuff that makes the automotive market special in this regard.
So obviously, because of this high volume and this precision that is often required, not to mention tight deadlines, I'm assuming that there can be friction between the OEMs and the tier ones.
There are people whose jobs it is to apply oil to that friction on a daily basis. Yes, the
I would
question
assume
there
as
is.
much. But out of curiosity, would you have any like tips or strategies to avoid this friction, or maybe list some common pitfalls that take place within those two tiers?
So manufacturing is changing. The advent of Industry 4.0, which is going to be a data-driven, highly interconnected digital manufacturing process, can, in and of itself, use the power of software and technology to streamline the production process as much as possible and improve consistency, quality, utilization, and inventory. So it is a way to accommodate the speed at which the automotive industry typically operates. Again, you have a plant in Toledo manufacturing parts that an OEM is going to assemble in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and every day the Toledo supplier is sending a truck to the plant in Fort Wayne with just enough inventory to produce the trucks that they're going to produce that day. So it is a very tightly coupled operation. You notice that during the start of the pandemic, when there were some supply chain issues, and especially in the automotive industry around electronic components, where they just had a real problem getting some of that stuff. Understanding then how to react to that from a production planning perspective when you had those material shortages and how you keep the operations running and what you have to do, it becomes pretty complex when something in that tightly coupled just-in-time chain starts to break. And being able to have a computer that can think faster than us help with that process has been immeasurable.
In closing, do you have any additional thoughts when it comes to contract compliance?
No, just if contract compliance is an issue for your company, I hope you'll give us a call. We can talk about it and maybe explore how we might be able to help you to make that an easier process and save some money at the same time.